Senate's bipartisan group of 8 says it plans to reveal its long-awaited immigration reform bill. I guess it's next Tuesday. Now, this is a battle that National Review reporter Betsy Woodruff has dubbed Grover versus the bitter enders. Some conservative leaders, like Grover Norquist, believe that immigration reform will boost economic growth and slash our budget deficits. All right, here now from Washington, the aforementioned Americans for Tax President Grover Norquist, and with me on set, my great friend, syndicated columnist Ann Coulter, author of Mug. Okay, this is great fun. Two good friends. Grover, who are the bitter enders, and what is your case against them?
Well, I think the American people are looking to move towards immigration reform. We have senators like Marco Rubio, Jeff Flake, Rand Paul, all moving in that direction. But what really happened over the last 10 years is the business community, small businesses, independent businesses that have been silent for too long on the need for immigration reform, guest worker program, high-tech immigration, STEM immigration. They've been silent. They're now coming out strongly for it. And the various communities of faith, Evangelical Protestants, the Southern Baptist Convention, the Roman Catholic Church, the Mormon Church, all of the so-called religious right coming out strongly now for immigration reform. So the base of the modern conservative party, the base of the modern Republican Party, Ronald Reagan Republicans are going home to their base, which has always been to be welcoming, to recognize that immigrants are an asset to the country, and they help make us stronger, they make us grow faster. Some great studies have come out on the economic benefits as well.
Right, we'll get to the economic benefits. Ann Coulter, want to give you even up your time on this. Business and evangelicals, I actually hadn't thought of that. That's a heck of a coalition. So, is the immigration story changing? Should it change?
No, I think it shouldn't change, and it isn't pro-immigration or anti-immigration. It's changing the current immigration policy. I think we ought to be trying to get immigrants who are better than us, not worse than us. And 85% of legal immigrants come from the third world. Since Teddy Kennedy changed immigration law in this country, 65% of them need some sort of government assistance. I mean, when I hear that, don't worry, immigrants are only on welfare 15% higher than Native Americans. It shouldn't be any immigrants. We ought to be we can't get the surgeons, the businessmen, the people who would be competing with everybody who's talking about immigration. It's the servant class that is coming in, whom taxpayers need to support. And of course, the business community has always been for immigration. Some elements of the evangelicals always have. But the point is it a good policy or a bad policy? It is bad for America. It is good for people who want cheap labor, while the rest of us subsidize cheap labor.
Let me just try this point. One of the reasons the economy is so weak and the unemployment rate is so stubbornly high is something called the participation rate. People are leaving the labor force. And if you leave the labor force, you can't grow. You got to have workers. I think what Grover's going to say, and I think what some new studies from Doug Holtz-Eakin and people are saying is, immigrants will replenish the labor force and help the economy to grow.
But you talk about the labor force, the problem with that is, as everyone is also saying, we're in a global economy. We do not need more low-skilled workers. We need high-tech workers. We need high intelligence and highly educated workers. The last thing we need are more cabbage pickers here who are putting the low-skilled workforce out of work. I mean, I think, as I've said before, I think there's a reason Mitt Romney got 20% of the vote of black males under the age of 30. They want jobs, and Mitt Romney had the toughest immigration policy in terms of bringing in more low-skilled workers to compete with them. If we were bringing in immigrants who were competing with you and Grover and the New York Times and senators and lawyers, you see these rural areas don't have enough lawyers, how about importing some lawyers to compete with them? I don't think we'd hear so much about compassion and being welcoming.
Is the issue brainiacs versus the low-skilled, or is it just one large pool of labor that can benefit? Ann is making some very important distinctions here. I need a response.
Well, look, there's several. I mean, the immigration reform package that's being put together, and I've seen some of it, as I think is a good step in the right direction, but it doesn't have enough high-skilled workers coming in under the new rules. We don't, certainly not under the old rules. In opening up the number of H-1B visas, high-skilled engineers and others, that got filled within a matter of days. We should be having a great number of high-skilled workers. But we also need guest workers and farm workers. let's keep understand. I really hesitate when I hear conservatives use the rhetoric of the AFL-CIO that more people somehow reduce wages. This is what the unions have been saying for 100 years. There used to be 3 million Americans. We were quite poor. There are now 300 million Americans. We're much richer. In a free society, more people are an asset, not a liability. That's the difference between the Reagan-Kemp understanding of a dynamic economy. More people, more babies, more immigrants make us better off. Fewer people, fewer babies, fewer immigrants is not the path to success. That's Europe. That's not the United States' future. We're going to be running the globe over the next 50, 100 years because we do immigration better than all the other countries in the world.
And, Coulter, we have a population trend. I'm just going to go back to this very simple. We should have as many brainiacs as possible, I agree. But even on the low-skilled, business wants low-skilled workers.
Yeah, because I have to pay for them. I pay their housing, their medical care, their food stamps.
But the Americans are leaving the labor force.
Grover's arguing against a straw man.
How are we going to get labor?
No one is saying we want fewer people, but it is indisputable that when you are bringing in, I am not, be quiet. When you are bringing in immigrants who are taking government benefits as opposed to immigrants who are paying in to the tax system, that is definitely an economic loss. Yes, it's an economic win for the businessman who gets the cheap labor.
Why not change the benefit? Well, okay.
But it's not an economic win for Ann.
Why not stipulate?
For most workers.
Some people are saying, though, that this argument about getting entitlements and welfare is not true because the legislation will be written better than that.
Oh, give me a break. We have 50% of illegal immigrants getting food stamps now.
Grover, what's your reaction? This is the entitlement argument. This is the Heritage Foundation. This is the Robert Rector argument. You have to contend with it. You heard Ann. What's your response?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's be fair to the Heritage Foundation. 2006, they put out a professionally, seriously done study which said that immigrants are a boon to the country and produce more than they consume. So Heritage has been on the record with a serious study that was quite good, and we shouldn't stick them with some of the other studies that haven't been as well thought through from time to time. Holt-Zekin has done another study which points out it reduces the deficit over the next decade $2.7 trillion because of this. These are serious economic studies.
Because more people entering the labor force would increase economic growth by 1 percentage point a year. I mean, it runs like the budget. And if you get that kind of growth from more people coming into the labor force, then the deficit falls by nearly $3 trillion.
This is preposterous.
Preposterous.
One second. Ann has said a couple of times what I've heard from other people in other areas, and that is, gee, we have a welfare system, and that makes some people dependent. Well, most of the people who go on welfare, aid to families with dependent children over decades and decades, were born in this country. We should fix the welfare system. We shouldn't organize our immigration policy around a failed welfare system. The Republicans have already passed through the House the Ryan Plan, which does for all 185 welfare programs what Clinton signed, the Republican plan, to do for aid with the families with dependent children. Let's reform welfare because it needs to be reformed.
Why not, Ann? Why can't we
you don't organize immigration or childbirth around the other.
What's wrong with that?
I'm all for it. It is preposterous that will come next. It's like the Rubio plan. Legalize them, then we enforce the border. No, you fix the welfare system. I'll not only talk about open borders, I'll talk about legalizing drugs, but as long as I'm paying for them. And back to the two of you agreeing with your fake little studies. This is like the liberal gun studies. The idea that you bring in an immigrant who is not paying taxes, who is taking food stamps, who is collecting, Medicaid, is somehow a boon to the economy. No, it is a boon to the people who are getting the slave labor, the businessmen. That is not most Americans.
I don't think they work.
And
give them so little credit.
You keep citing what Reagan's position.
They work.
No, it is a fact.
The majority of them come to work.
Yeah, okay, I don't care, but if 65% are getting government assistance, I am subsidizing the cheap businessman's cheap labor.
I don't want to disagree with you on the entitlement thing. All I'm saying is...
And, you cut off... Look, I asked one of my friends, Peter Thiel, about, this idea, all these especially the agribusiness. They keep saying we really need these guest workers. And Peter made a very interesting point to me, which was when he was creating PayPal, they tried to have the phone service in India. He said that didn't work. When that didn't work, We just fixed the problems. When one solution doesn't work, something is created. Because I had asked him, look, you guys are inventing everything. You can't invent a machine cabbage picker. We have to bring in hordes of Mexicans collecting welfare. And he said, no, they will invent it. They do it. They have invented it.
They work at stores. They work at fast food restaurants. I mean,
and they do not pay taxes, and they do collect government assistance.
Grover, I'll give you the last point. That's Ann's point. They don't pay taxes, and they collect assistance. What's your last response to that one?
We've been through this before. People said this about Irish Catholics. They said it about Eastern European Jews. They said it about Southern European Catholics. They said this about the Asians, the Japanese, the Chinese. Every wave of immigration in this country has made us stronger, better, wealthier. And yes, we should reform the welfare system. If there were no immigrants, we should reform the welfare system. But we should recognize that immigration has made us a better and stronger. And that's what I'm working on. Love to have your help.
I just want to say those other immigrants you mentioned went back because there was no welfare state. 30% of Italians went back to Italy because they couldn't make it. Now you don't go back. You go on welfare. That's why Italian Americans are so good.
By the way, the immigrants are going back to Mexico. There's more job creation in Mexico
than
in the United States.
They can go back and forth. There's no border.
All right, open borders. Was I fair?
Yes, you were.
I really wanted to. You're just two of my favorite people. It's a great debate, and it's a debate that's going to continue. Grover Norquist, you're the best. Thank you very much. And Coulter, you are too. Ann's going to come back and talk some more politics.